We often ask ourselves if there was something we couldn't live without, how desperate would our measures be to finally attain it? Hi, I'm Paul Holstein, and I'm going to be reading to you the story of Spilt Coffee on this episode of Poltergeist Frights. 1925. 5 years after the prohibition of coffee began in our country. The government took the one thing that helped our society function, and as a result, everyone around you always seemed tired and irritable. They tried to make up for it by making alcohol the replacement for everyone's morning joe, but that only made things worse. Sure, drinking the giggle water daily has its perks, like more leniency of when you can drink it, not to mention no one will know if you made a bad decision because you were drunk or just plain stupid. However, it's far from the bee's knees. Car accidents became more frequent, people randomly picked fights with one another, and it's definitely not fun when you leave work already hung over after a long day. The world I live in is far from ideal, but I try to make the best of it. I just go on with my day, a beer in hand, wearing my tattered suit and off to work so that I could go home and wallow in misery until I sleep. Then the next day, I will repeat that boring routine. Like always, I sit in my chair waiting to do my duty as a telephone operator. Not that anyone's ever sober enough to make or even pick up a call. Heck, I already drunk my fill to the point where I barely knew where I was. I felt myself getting drowsy as I kept staring at the machine that has definitely slept longer than me. I took another swig from the bottle before succumbing to the need for sleep. Hours passed before I woke up with a splitting headache and saw that my shift has ended about an hour ago. I was about to pack up and leave when a sound started hitting my ears, a sound that I'm not familiar with. It was a high-pitched and rhythmic with a word that kept repeating itself that sounded like, huh. I've heard of this sound called laughter that fits that description, but I never heard it for myself. I looked around for the source of this strange noise, and I saw it was coming out of a very peculiar-looking man. I saw him interacting with a couple of employees, who seemed just as intimidated by his behavior as I was feeling. He was dressed all spiffy in his suit that I'm pretty sure were his glad rags. When he stopped making that sound, his teeth and mouth worked together to make a crescent shape on his face. Was he actually smiling? Am I looking at a man that's happy to be here? Someone that's happy in general? He looked in my direction, discovering that I was staring right at him, and he started walking towards me, that weird shape still plastered on his face. I closed my eyes and put up my guard, prepared to get it for rudely staring at them. But when I opened my eyes, his hand reached out towards me so that I could shake it. Up close, he looked so full of life and joy, almost like alcohol had no hold on him. I picked up my stuff and started to leave, and when I looked back, he was still looking at me and waving goodbye with that unfamiliar expression. Every day since that day, he appears out of nowhere with that rare face, trying to make conversation with the normal people and asking them how their day was going. All that accomplished was scaring the bee's knees out of everybody, including myself. However, each day an employee comes into work with that same smile that the stranger had across his lips. They even laughed like him and became as social as him. Then another developed that attitude. Then another. And another. Until it looked like I was the only person with the same miserable attitude. I was still a man going through the cycle of his boring everyday life. I came in to work like always, taking out my already half-empty bottle to take a swig, when I felt a firm hand on my shoulder. I turned around to see the originator of this wave of natural happiness looking at me, warmly. He took out a card from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. It read, Al Cappuccino's Order of the Bean. My head was pounding from reading the small print, as I attempted to turn to return his card to refuse the offer. But the look on his face made me feel more uneasy. It might be because I'm not used to smilers, but something about the way he was doing it seemed off. like it was more of a threat to accept rather than a request. I followed him into the dark alley, trying to keep as much of a distance as possible in case I take a powder when things started to go haywire. We stopped at the end of the alley to just seemed like a big brick wall. The man called Al knocked on the brick, and suddenly a sliver of brick slid away, showing a pair of bright eyes. They widened like the man was the big cheese and closed the silver, and I heard an abundance of noises that seemed like locks coming undone before the bricks opened up. It was like an entrance someone would make in a storybook, as within these bricks showed a whole group of people wearing brown robes hanging out in a room the size of a royal ballroom. They were all laughing and enjoying themselves, like how all the employees at my job were acting after their meeting with Mr. Cappuccino. Al gestured for me to enter, and I reluctantly entered the bright room, immediately smelling a heavenly smell. It was strong, but inviting, and it seemed to be coming from the large wooden kegs that were on shelves behind what looked like a bar. A chair at the bar was offered to me by one of Al's buddies, which I took, albeit still a little on the cautious side when I did so. All that caution went out the window as I did so, as that beautiful smell got even stronger upon sitting. Al talked to the man behind the bar, who was smiling from ear to ear, directing his attention to me. Whatever he said made the man give me a mug, looking at me like I was the cat's pajamas as he took a weird-looking pitcher and opened one of the pegs. What poured out was some kind of dark liquid that was steaming as soon as it landed on the pitcher. He turned back to me and began once again pouring the liquid, this time into my cup. He called it a cup of joe, which made me realize what this was, and my caution came back in full force. This was a speakeasy, and they had a full supply of illegal coffee that could fill a bank vault. My returning unease must have been obvious as I felt Al's hand on my shoulders, his smile as wide as ever. He encouraged me to take a sip, and, worrying that someone might be packing heat in case I ran to reveal this to the fuzz, I slowly brought the black liquid to my lips. The substance tasted bitter, but after I swallowed, I felt a weird sensation flowing through my body. It was like a burst of energy was going through my veins, that I could take on anything this world had to offer. It was a great and miraculous feeling. However, the energy left as soon as it entered, and I was back into the original misery that I was all too familiar with. Except it was even more painful. I knew I needed to regain that feeling, which the bartender figured because he poured creamer into my mug and the liquid changed to a lighter color. I eagerly raised my mug, and when he finished pouring and the coffee tasted just as sweet as a return of that energy felt, I downed what was left in my cup and immediately reached it out to have it refilled. I didn't want to ever let that misery be part of my life ever again. In the corner of my eye, I saw a brown robe being offered to me. When I turned around, I saw a cappuccino connected to the hand handing it over. His smile was now as sweet as the coffee itself. Days have passed since I discovered the lifestyle that I want to be part of. Happiness. Me and the other employees now see Al as the cat's pajamas, our glorious leader. I still carried a beer bottle to work, but only to hide the fact that inside it was not beer, but the miracle drug known as coffee. Even after a small sip, I was practically jumping off the walls and laughing with my colleagues. Life has finally become worth living again, and there is nothing that the government or the coppers can do about it. Every night after work, we returned to the Order of the Bean, and this night would begin our initiation. Me and the other employees got in the middle of a circle of the older members, the hoods of their robes making ominous shadows out of their faces. Me and the other recruits put on our robes. They were baggy, but they were soft and cozy, adding to my excitement to finally leave all that past misery behind me. Al Cappuccino got into the circle, holding a platter with beer bottles and placing one on each of the future official members. We all had a choice to make. reject the evils of beer that the government forced on us, or continue to be their drones. The decision for me was all too easy to make, as I was the very first person to raise the beer bottle and smash it against the floor. Everyone else in my position followed with just as much eagerness. After the last bottle was rejected, cheers from the other members could be heard all around the place as Al gave us each a mug of coffee, and I took a rejuvenating sip from the heavenly Java. A huge celebration was happening all around us. In our honor, the people that now understand that our government banned the greatest miracle in history to suppress us, to weaken us. I was just about to walk to the bar to get more creamer in my liquid happiness when my foot stepped on the fabric of my robe, causing me to trip. The mug flew out of my hands and crashed on the floor, breaking on impact and making a puddle of coffee. The celebration abruptly paused. The older members gasped and screamed, and some of them desperately kneeled to the ground and tried licking up the liquid. The circle reformed, but this time I was the only one in the center. When I stood up, I saw Al Cappuccino looked at me, his smile twitching and tears rolling down his face, as if he was struggling to keep his calm and kind demeanor. I tried to run out of the circle, but the smiling people put out their heaters out of their robes, and I soon froze in fear. I heard the clicks, and every single person, other than the new members, had them aimed at me. I looked at the employees, the people I knew for years, hoping that they would help me, but all I could see was their smiling faces as they just watched. I thought coffee was banned to weaken us as a community, but now I know the truth. It was because coffee drinkers are crazy animals. Before I knew it, I heard Al yell out to his followers, and everything immediately turned to black. The last thing I heard was a series of loud bangs. And with that, guys, that was Spilt Coffee, and I will say it again. Definitely my favorite story that I have written this season. I really had a lot of fun writing this. And man, it just goes to show you that when you write something you enjoy, it translates. It just translates. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for listening in, and stay tuned tomorrow, because tomorrow will be the Coughing Man. And with that, guys, I am Paul Holstein, and this has been Poltergeist Frights. Thank you for listening.